I've got one of those directional mics. I think that helps a lot. Usually you got to be closer to it and facing it. And the idea is that, all this ambient sound would be cut off.
Yeah.
In the real world. But you'd be surprised how well it can pick up my young boys when they start screaming.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well, that just cuts right through everything.
Yeah, they'll only start screaming when you're doing something. I know the drill.
Only when it's
now, that was your oldest
really
boy, I take it? Yeah. That was your oldest boy who joined?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Interesting time to join. Thanks. Yeah. Interesting time to join the Army. I obviously have a few concerns, as a father, you worry about your son. I don't want him to get hurt or go through something that's going to mess him up psychologically, weird times.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, it's such an amazing, I know so many people have just had such an amazing experience in the military. And then I've known a few who don't talk about it. My grandfather talked me out of it. Cause he was full World War II all the way through. And he was, different times. Right. But
yeah, that's right. So yeah, man, thanks for coming on the show. Brother Ryan Flynn. So I know we talked about some things we wanted to discuss on the show, and I think, well, before I get into that, let's learn about you. I mean, I'd love to know a little bit more about your background, like where you're from, like a short biography of Ryan Flynn. I mean, and where you went to school, what you studied, what your interests are, how many times you've been in prison, the whole 9 yards.
Well, I'll start off this way. My dad was in prison for about 30 years. He was a guard.
I was on to something.
So yeah, I've actually, in a couple of weeks, I completely forgot about this actually. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be a Mason for 10 years. I joined, I had no idea what I was getting into. I knew I wanted to be part of something. I was on sports teams and that sort of stuff. And, I missed the camaraderie, I think. And my wife and I had moved from Massachusetts up to New Hampshire. I didn't know anybody up here. And, just kind of.
Where were you in Massachusetts? I went to school at BU.
I grew up in Concord, actually, in West Concord, Mass.
Oh, Concord. Okay.
Yeah. Then, as soon as, I was old enough to, pay bills, I realized that Concord was not the place for me anymore.
Yeah.
I got.
Yeah, maybe time to move to Alston or something. I remember I lived in Alston for a while.
Move to a cheaper place like Beverly Hills or something.
Right.
So I moved up to New Hampshire, and I knew a couple of people who got into the Masons, and they said it was great. And I said, yeah, you know what, let's look at this a little bit. And I looked into it and saw, the traditional stuff, George Washington,
right.
Mason, that sort of stuff. I was like, yeah, right. If these guys were involved, it must be good, or I hope it's good. So I joined up. I joined Ancient York Lodge in Nashua. And I was very lucky to have a good friend of mine be my mentor. And while we were doing our catechisms and stuff, it was more about discussions than memorization, which I think is the reason I got on this path, because we had some really great talks really early on. I went into the lodge, and I noticed that, we had some education, and I thought we could do better. And luckily we had a couple of guys in the lodge who were education driven, and we started a little thing, and got bigger and bigger. We were very, very fortunate to have a lodge that was supportive. Not everybody agreed with it, which is fine.
What was the little thing you started around education?
Just getting education involved. Starting to take ritual a little bit seriously. My buddy Chris, he's actually just been installed as the grand lecturer. But he was all about making sure ritual was right. And I wanted to start talking about the ritual, and we had a great line of people.
It's a nice marriage.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. We had a lot of brothers who would just say, yeah, let's do it. And let's see what happens. And we were lucky. And so, I enjoyed, for the most part, my years as a Mason so far. And, I've definitely grown quite a bit, and especially in the way I look at the world.
Right.
You know, I completely am a different person than the person I was who knocked at the door. I'll say
Wow.
that.
Wow.
Um,
So you
and
put those tools to good work.
I'm
You try to
trying.
anyway. Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
trying,
It's
hammering
not
away.
easy.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is
yeah.
not eeasy. But yeah, it's been good.
Maybe you should let your wife use the tools on you,
Yeah,
or she already does.
yeah. Yeah, seriously. I'm not handing her anything sharp.
Yeah, no,
If I mention the
yeah,
word masonry and sharp in the same word, I know where that sharp point's going right now.
yeah, yeah.
So
Don't give her the axe. Don't give her the
yeah,
axe.
yeah. So yeah, it was weird. So about 2 years after being a mason, I got a chance to do some stained glass windows and or design some stained glass windows for my temple. They're not real stained glass, though I designed it for stained glass, and that started me off on the path of Masonic art, and I haven't really stopped yet.
I'm really happy about that. I mean, that's one of the things I really like about what you're doing is you're bringing in this whole professional art aspect into masonry, and it reminds me of the good old days of the Renaissance and those times when artists, tried to make art that had more meaning and brought across the importance of virtues and wisdom and spiritual knowledge. We need more artists like that are doing art with an intention to bring peace to the world and to help elevate the consciousness. And it seems like you might be one of those guys.
I hope to. I like to think of myself as one of those guys. You know,
Yeah.
it's one of my goals. You know, when I started out, I noticed something that it sounds. I'm trying not to be general. I'm trying not to generalize, but it is kind of a little
Right.
bit judgmental. It is, I saw the square and compass had turned into a logo, and it was just being slapped on anything and everything, and people would be like
Right.
Masonic. You know, in one of my
Right.
presentations about why we need to bring Masonic art back, I show a picture of a thong with a square and compass on it. Like how is this Masonic?
Oh my God.
You
Yes.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
when I first started around, there was only like one or two places maybe that you could tell that they were seriously putting the thought and effort into what they were making in it, and it wasn't like a catalog type thing where it's Mason now because I put a square and compass or a beehive on the side of it.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
I it's amazing how much 10 years have changed, because now you're seeing a lot more of that coming out. There's
Mm.
there's a lot more lodges out there supporting the arts. You see these amazing temples that are being painted and redesigned,
Right.
uh, and it's crazy time to be in. And it's
Yeah.
I really do believe we're about to hit the Masonic Renaissance, because we're
Yes.
it's exactly how you said. Like it wasn't just about the art for the Renaissance; it was about the meaning behind the art.
Right.
And I truly believe that Freemasonry is a continuation of Renaissance philosophy. A lot of the
Hmm.
same sources, a lot of the same intentions, that sort of stuff. I mean, even
Right.
say kind of like the Platonic Academy of Cosimo Medici was, in a sense, a Masonic law. I'm gonna get chewed up for that, but yeah, it's just incident. It's very interesting how the times that were happening there. Of course, there's historical differences, but what was going on in the world and what's going on in the world today are very similar. And it took a very small
That's
group of
right.
people to start the Renaissance. I mean, the Renaissance really, when you get down to it, was less than 100 people really
Mm.
pushing the arts.
Yeah.
Well, Renaissance that
Yeah. It
we know.
doesn't have to be thousands and thousands. I
Right.
mean, you're never really going to get that number of people that care, about high quality or spiritual things in the world. So it's always going to be a relatively smaller number of people. But that's where that whole zeal and passion comes in, that zeal in masonry.
Mm,
And if you got 1,000 people like that are super passionate about it and working day and night and care deeply about bringing peace and change,
mm.
positive change in the world, it can happen. It really can, especially if
Yeah.
they're strategic about it.
Yeah, and I one of the things I used to say when I was master, we didn't have a huge turnout in our lodges, just like every other lodge right now. But I'd say it every time, and I meant it. I'd rather be in a lodge of 20 good guys who are really trying to
Mhm.
change themselves than a lodge of 300 who are just there to pass the
Right.
time. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's where the change happens with you. So uh,
That's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, I was in a discussion. I think it was on the last show I did with brother Doug Mason, and we
mhm.
were talking about whether interest in Masonic education and the meaning of the symbolism and the wisdom in Masonry should be sort of a requirement when you're sort of vetting a brother potentially to join a lodge that's petitioning. We were just talking about that because, we have our basic requirements, like, belief in God, no criminal record, you got to be a man, real basic stuff. But the rest is left up to the interview committee and what people think. And there's a lot of room there for, variance. And I was just wondering, if we have someone who wants to join Masonry, for example, just to do because they want a fraternity to be part of. They just want brothers and friends and a network of friends that will support them. Is Masonry the right fraternity for them? There's other fraternities that focus just on being a fraternity, and they're actually maybe even better at it than we are, maybe because that's all it's about. And there's some that focus completely on charity, and they might be better at it than we are, like, in terms of, like, not in the broadest sense of like love to everybody, but physically, doing stuff, feeding the homeless or whatever in your community. There are organizations that are better at that also than perhaps the Masons. And if that's what they joined for, might we not recommend they go towards one of those organizations? In other words, if someone has no interest in the sort of the wisdom school tradition inside of Masonry, has no interest in the symbolism, would Masonry be appropriate for them?
Well, first of all, I'd commend you on saying something that a lot of Masons won't say. And, I'm trying not to generalize because Masonry is so diverse. But you just said that other fraternities do it better than us. And that's true. And it's a hard pill.
Yeah.
It's a hard pill to swallow because, we've blindly said, and let me finish before people judge me here. Okay. Sorry. We blindly tell all these people that they're coming in, you're about to join the greatest fraternity in the world. And I truly believe that. I really do.
Me too.
But it lies in its purpose and not what it achieves. It's very easy to judge the success on people and what you see on the outside world. But if you're joining a fraternity, which goals are the person, yourself, your self-betterment, you can't judge that by looking at it on the street. If you see, like, for example, the Lions doing all this stuff for blindness, you see what they're doing, and it's very easy to say wow, and you should say wow. They do incredible stuff. Chamber of Commerce, that's the Rotary Club, all these people, they do very visual things, and it's very easy to say, like, I wish we could do stuff like that. But the truth of the matter is we do stuff like that. We just don't do it the same way. So first of all, I think that's important. As to limiting, take a step back. The way my lodge does it now is we slow down the process of bringing people in. And we won't hand you a petition unless we know you for 6 months. And, come to our dinners, come hang out with us, once in a while. Hey, get a beer with us. Let's just talk, because I want to know you. My general rule for myself is I'm not going to let you in my lodge unless I can trust you with my kids. And that's how I look at it.
That's a good rule. That's a basic,
Yeah. And I'm a family guy, and it's just that's a big statement for me. I want someone in my lodge who I can invite into my house whenever they need to be there. And
that's getting at that moral character aspect,
which
is really underlying, especially Blue Lodge Masonry.
Yeah. But as to the esoteric stuff, it's not for everybody. And I think one of the beauties, the beauty of Freemasonry is its diversity. There are lodges out there that only do charity work. If you mention Plato, they'll roll their eyes and kick you out, and that's okay. Yeah. That's them. There's lodges out there that just meet up and are fraternal, and that's a key aspect of our fraternity. And for some people, that's what they need. So, I went through the phase of, if it's not education, it's crap. Grumpy old soon-to-be master. I'm not even a past master at that point. And I was wrong. I really do believe I was wrong. You have to embrace all aspects of Freemasonry, and it's going to work. That's the beauty of traveling. You can go to a lodge that does that, or you can go to a lodge that does that, and you get to experience it all. Right. And I think that's one of the reasons go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, and to be fair, it was more of a thought experiment when I asked that question. I I also don't see any reason to be strict about people having an interest in education, Masonic education, to be a Mason, or even to have an interest in self-improvement necessarily, which is tied closely to Masonic
Yeah.
education. You know, and I think that there's also room for diversity in lodges. Like you said, some lodges might focus more on charity, and that's what their members are into. And you have lodges out there that are very focused on esoteric stuff, and they come right out and say that, and and they make the choice to filter brothers they let in based on interest in esoteric, because they want that to be the focus of their lodge. So there's a
Yeah.
lodge for each brother out there. I mean, hopefully you find the one that fits you, that's near to your house,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
I mean, I know brothers who drive 2 hours to lodge, you know, because they go to the lodge that fulfills them.
That's
Those
right.
are, you know, there's a lodge up in Vermont that's one of my favorite lodges to visit, even though I've only visited twice, is Fibonacci Lodge 112, and that's a TO lodge, and
Yeah,
that's, you know, I think it's like a third of the way up the state, and I know people are coming from the Canadian border to go to lodge, you know,
that
because it
interesting.
means that
Yeah,
much to them. So,
yeah.
you know, I was at Masonicon. Was it last year? I think it was last year. And Chris Hodap got up and said, you know, if you have a bunch of brothers who, you know, all like model trains, then make Lionel Lodge number 1, 2, 3,
Yeah,
and
there you
enjoy
go.
it.
Yeah,
And there's nothing wrong with that. And I couldn't agree more with him.
right.
So,
Yeah,
but I think, you know, if my core requirements for meeting someone is, or letting someone get a petition would be, all right, do you understand what you're getting into? First of all, like, you're going to have to work. We expect things from you.
there
You
will
know,
be goats involved.
yeah. Oh God. um, yeah.
Yeah,
But you know, and just be like, you know, my thing is, this is serious, you know, for
yes,
me. But
right.
you know, for someone else in a different lodge, it's completely different, and that's fine, as long as they're bringing in people who are not going to hurt the fraternity, and that's the key.
No, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I think I think I have a similar requirement in my own mind anyway, with people that are interested in joining Masonry. I mean, I just want them to be decent people, you know, a good person, nice guy, um, someone who seems to be respectful, who has a genuine interest in Masonry for whatever the reason may be. Like you said, there are various reasons why someone might be motivated to become a Mason. You do want to make sure that that motivation is a decent motivation, though, because
Mm.
there are some people that are like, you know, I'm joining so I can get a job, you know. And I heard that
Yeah.
some of these brothers have a job, and you wonder, well, is that really the best reason to join Masonry? If that's your sole reason to join, is to get connected to a network so you can get more job opportunities. In fact, I met one brother like that when I was working overseas. This was before I was a Mason, who said he was a Mason. And I'm like, yeah, why'd you get into Masonry? And I was studying Masonry on my own before I became a Mason. I was reading about it, and, you know, a lot of esoteric books, studying Manly Hall. And so I really wanted to become a Mason, but I was living overseas, so it was a little more complicated. I was waiting to come back to the States to actually join. And he said that he said, honestly, I joined for the money. And I was like, wow, you know, I tried to have like a very kind of normal look on my face. I didn't want to show him that
Honest.
I was actually, yeah, I mean, he was being frank. He's like, I joined for the money, you know. And, you know, there's a lot of ways you can make a lot of money in Masonry, and get connections to people that can hook you up. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting, you know. Um, but if somebody told me that when they were petitioning the lodge, I would have concerns
Yeah.
personally.
I've personally told someone, you know, join the Chamber of Commerce. You know,
Go ahead. And that
there's
comes
a
back to my original point. There are organizations that are
yeah,
better at that, perhaps, than
yeah,
Masonry.
yeah. I have, and he was kind of hard on it, and I was just like, buddy, that's not what this is about. You know, it's a
No.
perk. Yes, absolutely. You know, someone, you know, um, you can know someone who's looking for a job. You can know someone who's hiring, and maybe that connection's made.
Right.
But you know, I specifically told them, we don't walk into job interviews and give a secret handshake and all of a sudden we're a CEO of a
Yeah,
company.
no,
It doesn't
that's
work like that.
ridiculous. Yeah.
I really hope
Yeah.
it doesn't work like that. It would explain some things though.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, but yeah, you know, it's an interesting vetting process, and I fear those people who try to say blanket statements about Freemasonry as a whole because of it. Because, like you said, like we're talking about, everybody's different, and every lodge has a right to exist in its own way as long as it follows the tenets and landmarks of the craft. So
That's it. That's
yeah.
it. And there's actually a lot of flexibility, you know, in Masonry. I mean, and it's not even considered to be innovation. Like the fact that there is such a diversity of lodges with members with diverse interests, and lodges with different types of focus. Some are more historical, some are more charitable, some are focused on fraternal, some are more drinking clubs, some are ex-military guys that want to get together and still have that fraternal aspect that they had in their military connection. Some are more esoteric, you know. I mean, and so is this innovation? No, this is the diversity that's actually allowable under the lodge idea in Masonry, actually, which is interesting to think about.
Yeah, I mean, as long as
Yeah.
they're putting the effort in, that's, you know, we have ritual, we have rules.
Well, that's the same.
That's
Yeah,
the
that
thing.
stays the
You
same.
have to
Yeah.
have that. You know, Masonry without
Sure.
ritual is not Masonry. You know?
No, it's not. It's true. So, okay, so I wanted to dig in with you on, because I've seen, I think one or two of your lectures, by the way, that I really liked, I really appreciated. And your video that I think should have gone viral if it didn't. That was hilarious, man. That one video with you going out in this, and it was snowing and it was the wrong season or something. That was hilarious. Yeah, you should be a comedian, man.
Yeah.
That really was that was expert. I mean, that was like Saturday Night Live material.
To quote Mel Brooks, some people have called me vulgar. That's bullshit.
No, it was excellent.
Yeah.
But one of the things I like about your presentations and your sort of approach on education is it's very human. Yeah, it's very human, and you really get into the day-to-day struggles of a Mason, especially in interpersonal relationships and living in this world, and our emotions and our personalities and our egos. And I think that maybe that doesn't get enough attention, sort of the psychological aspects of being a Mason. And I'm seeing right now with all of this, you know, this complex crisis that we're in currently, that emotions are really starting to flare up. A lot of people were already frustrated and stressed out because of COVID. And then as as this extended, the economic crisis has been getting worse and worse. So people have those kinds of concerns. Plus the fact that Americans are not used to being in a space of insecurity. They're used to stable. Everything's going to be fine. This is America. Nothing bad will happen here. We're the greatest country on earth. We can't ever go south. Don't worry. Your investments are good. And now that's not so certain. And Americans are nervous, rightly so. And so I think a lot of people are getting ready to explode. Essentially, and it's coming out in different ways. And then, of course, now we have these protests and the looting and the violence, and now the military crackdown, or what appears to be a growing military crackdown. It's tough time, man. And so I've been seeing people getting really emotional on social media. Even Masons, that I know that are normally not that emotional on social media are getting a lot more political and a lot more upset and angry. I've seen, arguments between brothers online that really get out of hand, and it's shocking. And so I think something needs to be done. Something needs to be said about this. We need to talk about it. We need to figure out how can we bridge this divide. So I wanted to kind of dig into some of those aspects with you, the self-improvement stuff. And we can, I guess, start off with the sort of vitriol that we're seeing on social media, especially with, political leanings, whether it be right or left generally. Yeah. And how do you think a Mason should comport themselves online and social media in terms of comments and posts and such?
So, this rise in, and I'd like to call it, it's psychological Masonry is a good term, but contemplative Masonry was coined kind of by Brother Chuck Dunning. He's my guy.
He's great.
His book, if you guys haven't read it, you have to read it. There's a few books out there on Masonry that I say you have to read. That's one of them, and I would even say that's one of the first. And he gets into how does this affect you personally, it started me down a thought process that I haven't gotten out of yet. And I'm not really trying to, because what led me to it is I'm reading his book, and his book has exercises in it too. And the way I read books is kind of weird. It's the ADD approach, where I'll read something, I don't understand what I'm reading, and I'll go off and try to figure out what he was saying. And then I'm off on a tangent for 3 months trying to figure something out. And I'll
That's
be
the
like,
way I
oh,
read
crap.
too, man.
Yeah. Oh, crap. I should probably finish that book. That sort of thing.
I've got like 8 or 9 books on my desk that I'm constantly like, I'll, dig into one for a few pages, then I give up. And it takes me like hours to read a few pages because some of the stuff.
Yeah, I'm the same way. But, it got me off on this tangent about like, well, I shouldn't say tangents, it's thought process, because, we use that term all the time, like make good men better. But how? And
how?
I really wanted to contemplate on that for a while, and I did. When I paint, usually that's my quiet time, and I used to broadcast it. I used to like, hey, watch me paint, because I was trying to make people remember I paint. But I realized that my best time and my real like meditation part of my life is when I'm alone in my studio. So I stopped doing that so that I could really focus on thinking. And I was thinking about how every Mason says that, but how do we do it? And I think over the years we've kind of got this lackadaisical approach to making people better. We kind of assume that, because you're around good people, you're going to be better now, and it's like greatness is going to be brought in through osmosis, and all of a sudden you're good.
Right.
But, it doesn't work that way. Yes, being around people is great, but what do you expect if you go to lodge once a month and you're around those great people for an hour? Like, how much is that going to help you? So, really taking the lessons of the craft and really trying to apply it to yourself rather than read it like stereo instructions is kind of the key for me. So, I did exactly what I was talking about with the books and started looking at the ritual, like where do we start? And, the first thing that I got to was, we're rough ashlers. And that's a dangerous and bold statement to start off your craft with. You are not perfect. You are not even close to perfect. In fact, you're so not perfect, you don't even know what perfect is, and
not everybody can accept that.
No, it's hard. You're a flawed human being. We all are. And if you accept that in your life and realize that I do not have all the answers, I am not the ideal Mason, that sort of thing. And you apply that to the way you look at the world, it makes acceptance of other ideas more easily acceptable.
Yeah, of course.
And what I see with social media is it's the complete opposite of a well thought out thought process. We live, and COVID is kind of this perfect this perfect conundrum, perfect example of this conundrum, because
perfect storm or
it's like, so you have the scientific community, which is based off of study, results, hypothesis, restudy, all of this stuff. It takes time to do this. And it mashed up with COVID, the way the media works, which is, I don't care if I'm right as long as I'm first. So you had this one person shouting out everything that's coming out. Oh, now COVID will kill your cat. Oh, COVID will kill tigers.
Right.
Now it's going to kill your baby if you breathe on it from a quarter mile away.
Now you get COVID toe or COVID nose.
Yeah,
COVID
right.
toe.
And it's just like
all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, but it's like, no, that they're studying it. They're trying to answer. That's not the final decision, but the media would say like, no, this is it. And people didn't know what to believe. So what do? They get angry. And because it's frustrating. They're rightly frustrated.
It is frustrating.
With political stuff, I don't even like to call them political arguments anymore, because I think a political argument, or any argument that you're really going to do, puts some thought into it. You're pressing your ideas. And one of the things I've come to grips with is most of the time people are arguing with other people's ideas. They're not even spitting out stuff that they believe. They're spitting out stuff they heard. And they're not putting any thought process into thinking about it.
Right. And often by just sharing things, right? Sharing things produced by somebody else. Usually memes.
Yeah. Read this. Like, okay, why?
Yeah. What's your take on it? Does that mean you
Yeah.
support the article? I mean,
Yeah,
Uh,
and it's from a stupid source that you know is biased, and it's
right,
just like, all right, now I don't have to think because I hit share. And
right.
we've been constantly taught lately that, thinking for yourself is just not acceptable anymore. And I think one of the reasons for that is
Yeah,
because when you think for yourself, you have to think in terms of not yourself. You have to take someone else's point of view into consideration and welcome it, which is, it's hard to do in any circumstance. And you have to be able to listen to someone who says the complete opposite of what you think and respect what they're saying so that you can learn from it. And that's transitioned to everything, and including this racial tension right now, because you
mm,
know what's happening is horrible, and the Black community deserves to be upset, and they deserve to be
yeah,
angry, and they deserve to be allowed to be angry. We
right.
could get into what rioting and stuff like that, and it's not really the point of this conversation, but you know that is a community that is hurting, and no
Yeah,
matter what they say and do, no one's listening to them. And
yeah,
but at the same time, if you take that thought process of debating yourself and looking at how you look at things and being able to accept um, other people's point of view, they have to do it too. You know,
mm,
I what I found in I posted something the other day, and like the first message came up. I was like, this guy's gonna fight me. And what I was saying was like, you got to look at yourself if you want to better the world. And
right.
I said something along the lines that a lot of people needlessly place their problems on a bigger, broader, more abstract issue than what it is, and
Right.
that's you. And
Ah,
you know what I was trying to say, and it's of course Facebook, so I made myself probably look like an idiot. But what I was trying to say is,
I think I remember the post, by the way.
yeah,
It sounds familiar. I read
I
that, I
left it
think.
up because I hope someone got a discussion out of it. But
Hmm.
what I was trying to say is, you can't just slap a title on something and call it the answer, or the problem. Some people, it's gotten to the point where if you want to talk about racism, sometimes proposing the question is racist, and
Mm,
it's not intended to be that way. If I want,
right, right.
if you want to say, like, do you want to talk about the is this racism, is this based on monetary differences, is it based on if these separations could have so many other reasons besides race, let's talk about that. No, you don't get it. And most of the people who argue like that don't are not fully committed to the problem at hand too. It's kind of like the thing to do. And it bugs me, because I think this avoidance of conversation, and this avoidance of real conversation, I should say, is so prevalent right now that I don't know what's going to happen. And it's not just race.
That's a good point.
It's not just race. You go to any college now, and if someone who's in any sense controversial, there's protest, because
Right.
what is he going to burn the city down? No, he's going to talk.
Yeah, and this is the whole. I mean, this lines up with the whole sort of anti-PC movement, and part of it that I actually agree with. I mean, there's a balance. You're right. There's some key issues here that need to be discussed, and there's some questions that need to be asked, and we should be okay in talking about it. But some of the areas that need to be talked about, people are afraid to even bring it up,
Hmm.
because they'll be shut down or something, to even raise it as a question, even as a thought
Yeah,
experiment. Can we at least just chat about this, please, on the side?
yeah.
And so there's not that space. People are very emotional about this stuff. And at the same time, I understand the idea of progress, and that, for example, maybe 100 years ago, you'd be okay to call a Black person, the N word or something. And now it's not, but that's a good thing. I think that's good that that's no longer happening. But during that time, those that were saying, hey, don't say the N word, that's not so good. They thought the people that were saying the N word would say, hey, don't give me that PC stuff. I'll say what I want, you know? And so they were annoyed by those progressives at that time that were saying, we can't be saying that anymore. We can't be
Yeah.
doing that anymore. But now everyone's pretty much in agreement that, yeah, that's the kind of thing you don't want to be saying, you know?
Yeah,
And
we live
so
in
there
such
is
a
this progress that does happen. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just like we forget many times that progress takes time, and it's unfortunate because we're humans. We're only here for a certain time on Earth, and things are not going to fix itself in our lifetime. I hate to say it, but they are going to fix themselves. You know, it's one of those things that I don't like about the people who teach that, you know, America is this evil institution that, you know, we're always trying to work off the, you know, but if you look at it objectively, yes, the people who started this country had bad sides to them. They were, you know, George Washington owned slaves. Yes.
They're human.
But they were human
Rough
beings
ashlers.
living in,
hate to say it, they were rough ashlers, folks.
Absolutely. But in their times, they were still making small leaps and bounds, and that contributed to this. And America, for the most part, has progressively gotten better since its foundation. We all live in a time that is much better than our grandparents. You know, despite what we want to say, we're making progress. And the reason we're making progress is those people who not only can make those arguments, but know how to argue. And that, you know, I think that's one of the real reasons that we're told in our middle chamber lecture to learn the liberal arts and sciences, especially, you know, the trivium, you know, grammar, rhetoric, and logic. Because if you ever meet someone who's good at those, like who has really, really locked that stuff down, they are dangerous people. Because you cannot debate them. You cannot debate them. They will destroy you if you're in your argument because they know what they're talking about. And it's, you know, if you can, I think the only way the only subject I could debate on that I really wanted to do is maybe art. Maybe if that's the level I want to get at.
Right.
You know,
well, that's your subject matter. That's your expertise.
But you know,
you've studied that.
Yeah, but
you could hold your own in a conversation.
Yeah, you know, I can win a conversation about art. You know, there's my life goal, right?
Yes.
But you know, if we apply that passion to other things, especially Masonry and especially what we stand for, you know, we can make a lot of good. But shouting out your guys, you know, your guy's Hitler, like, no, you're doing nothing here but making noise.
Right.
And,
right.
So I think, you know, if Masonry wants to attack this problem, whether it be politics, whether it be racism, you know, the first place we got to look at is ourselves. And I think that's what Masonry is supposed to be teaching us is you're rough ashler, fix it. Help.
Right.
Make sure you have the right people helping you fix it.
And it seems like one of the biggest issues that some Masons are having right now is with anger. And lashing out, you know, with emotion of anger. I'm angry at these people. I'm angry at this other side. I'm angry at this person who posted this. I'm angry at this, and they're letting this anger out. And it doesn't look good for, you know, Masonry when Masons behave that way. And so, and we all have it. We all have anger, and we all make mistakes, and sometimes we respond too quickly. While we're in the heat of the moment, we're upset about something, and then we sort of regret, why did I say it like that? Or I should have had a more mature tone, maybe been more respectful in what I said. You know, how do we control our anger better? I mean, what's worked for you? Like, do you have any practical techniques that you use to control your anger?
I actually have a horrible temper. It's probably one of my biggest chunks I need to chop off that ashlar. And I'm one of those people who had issues going. Yeah, you know, it's you know, I'm one of those people who had very, very bad issues growing up with anger, and I've gotten out of most of them. If I go off, I'm off. You know, it's get in the car, drive away from the house before I do something stupid. You know, but you know, when it comes, I don't get angry much anymore about conversations or posts and stuff like that because, you know, the only person who makes you angry is you. You know, the only person who gets offended is you. Like that's the person who causes it. And
that's a good point.
You know, it goes to that idea of, you know, if you can make a lot of bad decisions, but no one else is making those decisions for you. Someone, I forget who I heard that from. And when it comes to being angry about a situation, you have every right to be angry. You know, but I think there's a difference between anger, rage, and irresponsibility. if you're angry, that's good. That means you believe in something, and something has hurt your feelings. And, with the race thing, everybody's angry, and they should be angry,
Right.
But misplaced anger and aggression, that's a different thing. So, if you're angry, it's either because your feelings are hurt or you don't understand what's going on. You're out of your comfort zone. So if your feelings are hurt, then why are they hurt? Start asking the question, why is your feelings hurt? And maybe your feelings are wrong, keeping that in mind. I try to approach everything now saying, I'm probably wrong. And,
Right.
and it's kind of changed the way I look at certain things, where even if someone posts something that I completely agree with, I almost try to argue with it with myself first, because I want to hear the other side of the argument. Because many times I'm like, I'm really glad I didn't post something there, because I would have looked like an idiot, because he's right. And and keeping that rough Ashler thing going, like, all right, there's a very good chance I'm wrong here. And if you start really thinking about it and you start really contemplating on some stuff, you might come to the conclusion that you're right. You might come to the conclusion that you're wrong, but at least you thought about it. And that's one of those things I don't like about this social media age, is people expect you to have an answer right away. And, there's memes going around saying, if you don't say anything, you're for them. I'm like, no, you're not. You're not saying anything. As long as you're thinking, good. And
let me have my free will, God damn it.
It's and nowadays on social media, if you say anything, you're going to get crap for it. I didn't change my profile pic to the black screen. I didn't do it for a reason. And I got a message from someone saying, how dare you not do that? And my response was, I'm really trying to make sure that I don't need to change my profile pic to know that I'm not a racist. If that's what I need to do to say, okay, I'm on your side, then I'm doing something seriously wrong. And that's how I felt about it. And you don't have to agree with me. I fully support the people who did it. This is the way I try to live my life. And I got railroaded by this guy for doing it. And I made a decision, I'm going to stick with it. But at the same time, it's like, why are you getting angry about that? Or why does this affect you so much? You're doing what you think is right, then who cares what other people do?
Right.
It's such a complicated situation, and there's no quick right answer to do it. No meme is going to solve racism in America. I honestly don't think racism will ever go away. I think it's a natural part of being human, but it's how we treat that natural part and how we use that in our lives that we can change. So it's so complicated.
It is complicated. And I think that some of the anger that people feel sometimes comes from personally held, very strong beliefs that you feel are being threatened, especially if those beliefs are all wound up and interwoven with your sense of identity.
Yeah.
So in other words, an attack on that belief in particular, I would consider that an attack on me.
Yeah.
In my ego. And I love my ego. And so that makes people very angry. And, the easiest example is, look at your wife, or, if you get criticized by your wife, oh, you're not a good person. You say you're into Masonry, but, I see these other Masons are doing good, but when have you done the dishes? What kind of Mason are you? You don't even help your wife out. That kind of thing could upset you, because in your mind, you have this belief that you're a good guy. You really feel you are a good guy, and that's an important thing for you. And that's a real thing that you value and that you've always strived for, and that's fundamental, and you really believe that about yourself. And then she's saying that's not true.
Yeah.
That's gonna upset you.
No, there's two examples that I didn't share for a while, and now I do in my presentations. And one of them you just said. So I had a really, really hard time being master. We had some stuff going on in our lodge that kind of tore the lodge apart. And even though I was master, I was kind of in the middle. And it's still there. And I was getting to the point where I'm a year into my 2-year term, and I don't want to go to lodge anymore. And I'm pissed off, and I'm taking it out on other people. And my wife would just be like, why are you going? Why are you going? This is supposed to be fun. And, my response would be like, well, I took an oath and I'm going to stand to it. And you know, at one point she just sat me down and was just direct with me and said, like, you know, you're putting this above your family right now because you're treating your family like crap. And it hit me.
Yeah, that hurts.
And I was just like, it hurt. But you know what? The reason it hurt was because she was right. And I'd been a jerk for a year and a half.
Yep.
And, I came down to
Did you admit and realize that immediately, or did you first get mad and then you thought about it?
Of course I got mad first.
Right.
I went down to my studio, and then over the course of a couple of days, I was like, I'm really happy I have someone in my life who can be that honest with me. And I was right. And I'm not joking. Within the next state of communication, I went to this mindset of, I'm going to get through it. You know what? It's not the most important thing in my life, but I'm going to do it because it's my job. And I can't wait to get home and hug my kids.
Yeah.
You know, and it hurt to know you're wrong, but it's important. Yeah. And the other example that I do is, you know, looking at the bigger picture. So when my second daughter was 6 months old, 6 weeks old, she developed some sort of infection, and I was called on the way to work to get to Children's Hospital right now. Get her, go there, go right to the ER. They'll be waiting for you because a biopsy had come back, or a swab had come back. And I remember, you know, we got to the ER, and you know, the doctor was like, "Give your wife $20. She's going to get a coffee because you're coming with me." And they brought me into this room, and I had to hold my 6-week-old kid while they were giving her a spinal tap. And it's just like, it sucked. Like, I can't imagine. And I remember being so angry that this was happening. And I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to do. How could this happen to me? And, you know, what have I done wrong? Why am I being punished? Every question you can possibly think of. Right. So we ended up being in Children's for 2 weeks. And then you meet the people who are there. And, you know, I would go down to the calf to get a bite to eat, and you know these people just want to sit and talk to someone. And I remember distinctly talking to a woman who knew she was never leaving here with her kid. And it hit me so hard, like, how dare I complain about stuff? You know, there is so much that I can be grateful for in life. And to keep that mindset through the hard times is really important to me now. And it helps me deal with a lot of stress and anger. You know, I got T-boned into a telephone pole, you know, like 6 months after. I got out of the car, and I really didn't care. You know, I wanted to make sure the people in the other car, and she was kind of like afraid of me because I was being calm about it. I was like, it's a car. You know, yes, I just paid this off. Thank you, lady. But, you know, there's a bigger picture here. We're all walking away from this.
That's great.
You know, and it's applied to me a lot. And when it comes to injustices on me, and please don't take this as me comparing myself to what's going on with the Black community, because it's not. I'm just talking about me. You know, when an injustice happens, when I get screwed in some way, you know, it helps me look at it in a more calming and approach to it than the flash anger, I'm pissed off. Now, to transfer that to social issues, you know, it's really easy to say that I got my car totaled, but, you know, if we replace ourselves with the people that we're trying to argue with and say, like, okay, what would happen if, you know, a black, I won't even say black, what would happen if a Mason got shot every week on the street somewhere by a police officer just because he's a Mason, or you think it's just because he's a Mason? At what point would the Masons rise up? When would we have enough? Because Black people have been dealing with this forever. So maybe we should be looking at the bigger picture here and placing ourselves as a personal as a personal relationship to the people who are crying. And we're going to look at things a very different way. So I try to bring that up in my presentations. I try not to apply it to specific situations. In fact, this is, I think, the first time I've said, like, let's talk about this and racism, because I honestly don't think that the subject matter means anything. It's about you. It's about how you react to things and how you see the world. Masonry gives us this perfect illusion to it because we all have our own ashlars. Masonry is reductive in nature. We don't add anything to stone. It's all about chipping away stuff. I say in my presentation, I'm never going to
vices and superfluities
and
problems and imperfections.
But Masonry doesn't give you the answer. It doesn't say like, here's our secret word. Congratulations, you're enlightened now. Thank you for showing up.
Right.
But we
Damn it, I wish it was like that. Damn it.
Yeah, right. Definitely raise our dues if that was.
I know, right?
Yeah. But the beautiful thing about Masonry is we apply it to architecture in the temple. And if you think about what a temple is actually additive in nature. We put all of these stones together to build a temple, but each one of these stones is reductive in nature. So all of us together chiseling our way at ourselves will produce something that can be used for the greater good. And
that's it.
And it's a message that I don't hear talked about enough, but it needs to be one of the core messages of what we talk about, especially to our candidates. Because if we all apply our tools to ourselves and not someone else, don't go chiseling someone else's ashlar. You have no idea what their ashlar is about. Chisel your own ashlar, and you're going to make a difference in this world. Even if it's minute, it's a difference, and it's a good difference.
Right. And I think one way that I was thinking about today is to not give energy to those faults in the ashlar, and they could fall away by themselves if they're not given energy, and that you wouldn't have to necessarily chisel it. It'll just kind of dissolve because that chunk doesn't have the energy to support it anymore. And I'll give you an example. I mean, when you're criticized and you take it personally and you get angry, like my husband and wife example, and I can make up a bunch of those, and I'm sure you can too, or any other example where somebody attacks you in public or criticizes you in front of people and you feel really bad and then you get angry. It has a lot to do with identification with this ego, this personality that we think we are, which is really just a habit. It's a habit of reactions and emotions and ways of thinking. And I started thinking today, well, maybe if we just identified with our higher self and didn't get so obsessed with our ego as who we are, like Jeremy, the personality, Jeremy, who makes jokes like this, who thinks like this, who acts like this is who I am. And instead identified more with our higher self, which is like our conscience, that inner guidance, that inner spark of divinity. You can even do something crazy, like, if your wife is criticizing you about something, you could say, you know what, I'm going to go talk, I'm going to deal with that. Jeremy does have that issue. I think I'm his higher self. I know this sounds nuts, but
no,
I'm just saying, at least in your mind, to think like that, right? That I see that he has these issues, and I'm going to chat with him. I'm going to work it out, because I know I agree with you, and we're going to deal with that. This guy, Jeremy, needs to change. And by doing that, you are admitting that you're not actually Jeremy. That's a habit. That's a pattern that you want to overcome. But your higher self is also recognizing that and seeing that, and you want it ended too. Yeah. So you and the wife the higher self and the wife are on the same team. And you're both after Jeremy. You're both after Jeremy.
Yeah.
Or in your case, Ryan.
Yeah. No, I'm after Jeremy.
I'm Ryan.
Your fault. It's kind of funny. You mentioned exactly what I've been reading about. It was recently Masonry in my studies has taken me to psychology. I'm not a psychologist, obviously, but I've been reading like Carl Jung and hearing lectures about him. And it's amazing that you hear these things and you're like, that's in our ritual. Like, it's really a cool thing. And you hit it right on the head. There's a great story about Michelangelo when he was older, when people would watch him and he'd be able to hit a part of the stone and like an entire thing would break off. It would usually take hours to do with like a hit, and because he just knew it. And sometimes you have to hit your stone in a different place to remove the other stuff. And and getting to that core reasoning of what what you're really trying to accomplish. Like what is the real issue here? It's not that she said something that pissed me off. It's I'm pissed off. Why am I pissed off? What is this affecting me? Why is it affecting me?
Right.
And getting to that deep contemplative moment where you figure out what the real problem is. That's what there's a group of people protesting right now who, they've affected me a lot, and it might not be for everybody, but it affected me. Is there was this video of this guy who's a black protester who has this shirt that says "Free Hugs," and he's going on and he's hugging the cops and stuff. And yeah, that's great. It's a sign of peace. But then there was another shot of him just yelling at somebody, and this cop was just listening to him. And that's what he needs right now. He needs someone to listen. And he doesn't need, I'm trying not to speak for him, but what I'm gathering from watching a few of these videos,
that's your sense.
Yeah, my sense is, this is a person who is in deep pain, who needs someone to really listen, and not just superfluous listening skills where like, oh yeah, I'm going to change my profile pic because I side with you. I want you to hear what he has to say. And truly get the message out, because this man is hurting to the point where he is now putting his life in danger, standing in front of armed other people, screaming at them because he's hurt so much. And of all the videos I've seen, and the beautiful sit-down protests and the people coming together and stuff, that video of this man with tears in his eyes screaming at someone because that's the only way he can be heard right now, it hit me hard. Like it really, it's funny after I've gone through all of this, this masonry and you becoming a father and all this stuff that's happened the last 10 years. I am an emotional sap. It definitely hits me. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and I was sitting in my studio watching this, and I was tearing up. It was just, man, I really hope this guy's
powerful.
Listening. That's all he wants.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and just to add to that, I mean, this whole white privilege idea, I mean, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too far, but I understand it more these days. Well, I married an African woman. We've been together for about 20 years now, believe it or not. And I have 4 boys, mixed kids. My oldest, as you said in the beginning, just joined the Army. He's 18, and my youngest is 4. So I've got a 4-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old, and an 18-year-old. Yeah, it's all boys. Yeah, thank you. Please pray for me, brother. Pray for me.
I have an 8 and a 3.
And it's COVID, and we're all locked in the same house, and I'm supposed to work. How does that happen? So, but this white privilege idea, I mean, honestly, with all that's going on, I've actually had to have a talk with my boys about the police. And, I said, look, you guys, you look kind of black, you're mixed, and please be careful. If the police ever stop you, just be very respectful. Don't talk back. Don't say anything. I don't want you to get in trouble, because by your look, especially if you wear like a hoodie, because that's the style, the hip hop look, and you have little braids or something, they might get the wrong idea about you. Okay. And so you need to be aware of that. You need to calm down. I had to have the talk with my kid, but if I had a white kid, I might not need to have that talk. And I'm a white guy, and I had that experience because I had mixed kids. So it is a real thing. We have to understand that, having black skin does affect how people perceive you in the public and how you're treated by people. It's hard for us to understand as whites because we've never had that feeling.
And to add to that, this is actually something I've really contemplated on, because I wanted to understand the situation.
Right.
And an interesting idea came to my head while I was thinking about this is, and don't take this as the wrong way. It's just simply a hypothetical question to help me understand it better. But does telling your children that help or add to the problem? Because the thing that made me think about this, oddly enough, is we have free dog. We have a little neighborhood. Dogs run around the neighborhood all the time, and a dog ran up to my daughter that we didn't know, and my daughter freaked out. Like, she got really scared, and the dog sensed it. And they say that the people who are afraid of dogs get bit more, and that made me really think about, like, all right, well, if we take that concept and bring it to ourselves in any situation, but the easiest one to identify is the racial thing, where if you're telling a generation to be afraid of cops, how are they going to act when they interact with them? And
that's a good point. And I don't think I was trying to tell them they should be afraid of cops, because I think maybe in the
Of
case of
course, yeah.
cops, if you're afraid of them, that might actually help to keep you out of trouble. I'm
Yeah.
afraid of cops, you know, and when they come, I'm like, yes, sir. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know. I get nervous. I'm sorry. You know, I'm like, oh God, this is horrible. I've been pulled over, you know, and they generally are nice to me, and they often let me off because they can tell, oh, he's, you know, he's just a nice guy. You know, he didn't mean it and blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
So I think in the case of cops, it might be a little different from dogs. Hopefully, I mean, God, you know,
Yeah.
hopefully they have,
Well, I have a
they're
lot
not
of
so
cops in my family, so
animalistic in their, yeah, I know.
yeah.
So, but I don't know, but it's worked for me. So it's not so much that I was trying to make them afraid of cops, but I just wanted to let them know how they should behave around cops.
Mm.
Do not behave, do not defend yourself. I mean, do not be defensive, do not start yelling at them or anything like that. That's not going to help you. If you want to get, you know, out of trouble, you know, if you're in a situation and the cops come, you know, just be super respectful, do what they say. That was what I told them.
Yeah. No, and the
Which
reason
they
I brought
need
it
to know.
Yeah, and the reason I bring it up is I don't think either answer is correct. I just think
Sure.
it's one of those questions that people don't like to ask, you know, and it should be asked.
Right.
And,
Right.
you know, I came to a conclusion. I don't really have to get into it, but yeah, it's just that idea of like, all right, let me approach this from the other way, just to help me understand why I'm making these decisions. Is a step that I think we should. Well, I think I should do. I should say, and it works for me. So maybe it
Well,
would
putting
work.
yourself in somebody else's shoes. That's one of the points I think you're emphasizing, is that we should
Yeah,
try to put ourselves in the other person's shoes.
yeah,
Imagine.
and maybe sometimes the most righteous acts that we try to do is not as righteous as you think, you know. And you learn that many times you're doing stuff just because it's this thing you've kind of been taught to do, but maybe there's a different way of approaching it, and you got to apply that to everything you do in your life. And I think, you know, that thought process of looking at it from other points of view, it's very liberating as well. You know, one of the things that I got, one of these ideas that came into my mind that stopped me getting angry at political posts, other than that I just don't follow people who just consistently, is, I hate to break it to you, the Democrats need the Republicans and the Republicans need the Democrats, because both of their ideas are BS crazy if they were on their own. And you need checks and balances. You need, if someone's being crazy over here, you need someone crazy over here, or something bad's really going to happen. So when you see these bickering and stuff,
crazy needs crazy.
Exactly. You know, and you know, I'm not going to get into Trump or anything like that, but I'm not going to talk politics. But what I found interesting, on not a political scale, but just an observation scale, is, you know, Trump came in and basically bullied his way through the caucuses, because no one. Whoops, excuse me. I'm sorry about that.
You shouldn't have mentioned Trump. You see what happened?
Yeah, they heard me.
Don't say it.
No, I apologize about that. I thought that was awful.
No, it's all right.
No, but what I found out was just like, man, they didn't have anybody who was as big of a bully. You know, and it's just like, now the checks and balances are coming, you know, and it's it's an important fact about politics, is that it generates a healthy amount of debate. And the problem is we don't have anybody who can debate anymore, but you know, who can actually, but you know, when you look at political posts, or I shouldn't say political posts, but when you look at the reactions of our political leaders and stuff like that, most of them I can't stand, but I at least understand why it's happening now a little bit more, and it makes me less angry. I mean, I'm upset that we don't have leaders that can communicate well, and I'm upset that, you know, debates are not really debates anymore. But at the same time, I understand why it's happening, and that helps me become less angry about it.
Yes, and I think that's a really important point. I think that, you know, maybe this is the last thing we can talk about, is this idea of Masons as, you know, people that help bridge divides and bring people together and solve problems and arguments and de-escalate situations. I think we're peacemakers, you know, in this world, or at least we strive to be. And I think that you're right, that the two extremes now, you got an extreme right that brings the extreme left, and then they try to balance each other off. And so how do we as Masons sort of bridge the divide and become moderate voices? And I think that probably the first step is to at least act as a role model, in that you can see both sides and you can understand the sense in both sides, and come out publicly and say that, and I think that's one way to bridge the divide. And then some on the right and some on the left might realize, you know what, I don't have to only espouse everything on the left, or I don't have to only espouse everything the right is saying is what they think and believe. I can actually say that I understand the left and I understand the right. Both have a valid point. If we're honest with each other, there's a valid point this guy's saying, and there's a valid point this guy's saying, and what's wrong with holding that appreciation? And then we can have a discussion about, some commonalities there. I mean, that's why I don't like parties. I mean, I'd rather be in the free thinking party. I think for myself, I don't have, my party doesn't have bullets of what we believe. We actually address every situation on its own.
Yeah. And
use our brain and hearts.
Yeah. It's funny. What you're saying there too is the antithesis of like 90% of the political posts right here, where people go, I want to be part of the free mind party, but that's this party, not the other party.
Right.
And it's this divisiveness. It's this divisiveness that it's crazy. And listen, it's certain situations and certain things need extreme reactions, obviously. I mean, you can't be middle ground the whole time. You have to have something that you believe in. But if you have a full understanding of what the other side is arguing about or their beliefs, then you can figure out what needs more of that attention and what doesn't. There's so many things that, I see so many arguments on Facebook, and I'm watching them and I'm like, you guys are literally arguing the same thing. You just can't see that the other person thinks of it slightly differently or is using different terms. And all you need to do is work on those communication skills, and I shouldn't say work on your communication skills, and you're going to stop that from happening. And
absolutely. I mean, I think some general guidelines that I've thought of, both to reducing anger, because that was an earlier issue we talked about, but also social media. One thing that I've tried to do on social media side is try to interact on social media more like I would interact in person with somebody, at that same level of respect. So if I'm interacting with someone who has very different beliefs than me that I actually disagree with, I'm not going to go, you damn bastard, I hate you, you stupid idiot, you don't know anything what you're talking about. I would never do that in real life.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't also do that on social media, attached to my name. I mean, I guess if you really need to act that way, maybe you should have an anonymous profile with not your name, no pic, nobody knows who you are, and you can be a real jerk and let it all hang out. But under your name, and especially if you're a Mason, you got to think about that. How does this come across? Would I do this in real life? And if you do it in real life, then hey, that's who you are. And, maybe you should think about the working tools a little more.
Yeah.
The other thing is, anger. I mean, along with that one idea of sort of separating your ego from your higher self and identify more with your conscience and not with your personality, and because then you'll be defending something that's indefensible. I think also just taking a little time, sometimes a little break, like you say, you drive away sometimes to calm down first, listen first, and don't respond right away. If you have a problem, that's an easy one that everybody can apply. So if you're angry and you're about to respond to something in a way that would be unmasonic or ungentlemanly or non-virtuous, take some time, take 20, 30 minutes if you have to, until you calm down, and then write a more moderate response. And the other thing is the idea of evening reflections. Every night, I think a lot of the ancient philosophers and societies would often reflect upon their day at the end of the day, and maybe write down a little diary, or even just reflect while you're in the bed. What did I do today? What was good about what I did? Was there anything I did wrong? How can I improve tomorrow? Yeah. And to have that be a daily practice. I think that's also, these are just like some basic little techniques that might help some brothers.
Yep. Wake up every day trying to be just a little bit better than you were yesterday. Exactly. You're not going to be Plato tomorrow. You're not going to be Gandhi.
Unless you pay the $20,000 a year for the dues. Yeah. And then we might be able to work something out.
We'll start that launch tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be a big success, right?
Yeah, right. Uh, um,
Oh man.
it's I honestly it's funny. I use movies a few times. I like to use the arts in my presentations, and recently I've been on this kick of using kids movies to like press hard points. And
Right.
I'm stuck at home with my kids. I've seen every children's movie ever made, like every one, all of them twice.
Wow.
And
Wow.
yeah, but we were watching of all things Kung Fu Panda the other day, and this there's this scroll that's held up above this thing that says, "In it is the secret to inner peace and being the best you can be." And when he finally gets it, there's nothing in it. And that's a profound statement done with a fat panda that bounces stuff off his tummy. But
Yeah.
but it's true, and it's like, you know what, if you want to be a better person, if you want the world to be a better place, you're not going to find it in a secret word or grip or something like that. You're going to find it that you already have it. You just got to embrace it. And I'm hoping that, at least Masons, because we're told this stuff, that in these hard times, when we get back to our lodges and get back to borderline normality, that we really take that to heart and focus on ourselves. Because you save one man, you save the world, as the ancient Hebrew saying says.
That one man might be you.
Yeah, exactly. It is you.
Yeah.
Positivity flourishes in a world.
Yeah.
And so just because the negative gets all the press doesn't mean the positive isn't there. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. So, all right, brother. Well, this has been great. Thanks so much, Ryan. This has been fantastic. I love this kind of discussion. I've got a psych background. I'm a social scientist, so I love talking about all these soft issues.
I draw.
You draw, and I'm an artist too. I mean, I'm not like you. I'm not good, and I'm an abstract artist. I do it for fun, and I cannot draw anything real. So I admire and respect people who can, because I know that's a skill set.
I like to say, when people say you're a good artist, I said, well, watch me do math, and all of those high expectations are just going to go away.
Right. Yes. Cool, brother. All right. Well, thanks. You started my day off right now. I'm
this is great.
Get to some hard work I got to do for my job. Oh my God, this has been a tough week. So yeah. Thank you, brother.
All right. Great seeing you, brother.
Right. We'll continue the conversation.
Yeah. Let's do this again.
We will, bro. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.